Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2022 Arizona Bowl matchup between the Ohio Bobcats and the Wyoming Cowboys. Both teams have had good seasons getting to this point. Ohio comes into this matchup 9-4, and they're the runner-up in the MAC this season. They're taking on Wyoming, one of the top teams in the Mountain West this season. We'll be over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with your team trends. Ohio lost to Toledo in the MAC championship 7-17. Was the final score there. So a difficult loss for the Bobcats, but this team has still had a great season. They're 9-4 coming into this matchup. They were 7-1 in MAC play this season. So I mean, and 7-1 in conference puts them 2 wins above anybody else in the conference. So you could say Ohio for the majority of the season was the best team in the MAC, but in the end Toledo did win the conference championship game. But for Wyoming, this team lost to Fresno State 30-0, got shut out in the last game of the regular season. Definitely a brutal way to end the regular season, but not a bad season for the Cowboys. 7-5 heading into this matchup, and of course this team is a bit short-handed. I mean, both teams are dealing with their own shortage. I mean, if you look at Ohio, this is a team without their starting quarterback. Rourke is out, so that's going to be something that they have to deal with. Meanwhile, for the Cowboys, they're going to be without their lead running back, Swin, so that's going to be something to keep in mind. Both teams are not up to their best lineup, you could say, because both teams are missing some players. Games will be on Friday, December 30th in Tucson, Arizona. Your kickoff is 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Ohio by 2.5, so the Bobcats are favored slightly in this matchup. Over-under's 41, and the FPI is going with the Bobcats as well, 54%. Series history, Wyoming leads at 2-0. The last game was in 2008, and we saw those two matchups in back-to-back years. The previous one was in 2007. Once again, the Cowboys have won both matchups in the series. Stat comparison, Ohio is 45th in points per game, 58th in points allowed, 30th in pass yards games, 79th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they're 117th in pass defense, 49th in rush defense. So this team is a strong team in the passing game. But the thing is, though, once again, they're going to be without their starting quarterback, Curtis Rourke, who's had a great season, 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns, over 4 picks. Doesn't turn over the ball very much. He's had a huge impact on this team this season. This isn't like losing any mediocre quarterback. He's had a huge impact on this team. And so that's going to be difficult for this team getting along without him. But this team has been without him for a couple of games at least. They had C.J. Harrison as the primary quarterback in their last 2 games. They played pretty well against Bowling Green, won that game 38-14 with C.J. Harris. But then again, in the conference championship against Toledo, this offense could only score 7. They couldn't get anything going, so that is something to keep in mind. But they do have a really strong running back in Bangura, who's had a great season for this team. At least they got him in the backfield. I'm sure he's going to have a huge impact in this game. He rushed for over 900 yards this season and 12 touchdowns, so something to keep in mind there. As for Wyoming, this team is, they're decent on defense, but offensively they've really struggled. They're 109th in points per game, 43rd in points allowed. They're 125th in pass yards a game, one of the worst passing offenses in the country here, but they're 31st in rush yards a game, so a strong rushing game here with the Cowboys. They're 64th in pass defense, 76th in rush defense. This team, that's the thing though, is they're strong in the rushing game. That's how they put up points. But the thing is, they're without their star running back, Titus Swin, who's had a great season for this team, over 1,000 yards of rushing, 8 touchdowns, and unfortunately for Wyoming, they're going to be without him in this matchup. He is not going to be participating here. So, yeah, that's going to be a difficult loss, especially when this is an offense that has struggled to put up points this season. You need everybody you can get, and Wyoming is without Titus Swin in this matchup. So defensively, that puts a lot of pressure on this defense because they got to be really good and hold Ohio, because it's going to be tough for the Cowboys to score more than 20 points in this matchup, that's for sure. Recent matchups, Ohio, they lost to Toledo 7-17. That was in the MAC championship. They beat Bowling Green to finish out the regular season 38-14. Beat Ball State 32-18. They also beat Miami, Ohio 37-21. Beat Buffalo 45-24. So this team was generally really good down the stretch. It was just that one game against Toledo where this team just did not perform well and they came out flat. But for Wyoming, this team, they got shut out to Fresno State to finish out the regular season 30-0. They lost to Boise State by 3. So 2 brutal losses to finish out the regular season. They beat Colorado State 14-13, beat Hawaii by a touchdown, and also beat Utah State 20-14. Something that I will notice, and that I have noticed, and something I will say about these two teams, Ohio has been much more dominant this season, and they've got a far better record. This team is 9-4, and they've honestly played their opponents way better than Wyoming. The Cowboys haven't played quite as well down the stretch, and they've had a lot of close games as well. I mean, they haven't really played a difficult schedule. Their best win is probably over Air Force, and they beat them by 3. I mean, they beat Utah State by a couple of touchdowns, beat New Mexico by a couple of touchdowns, but they do have a bad loss to San Jose State on the schedule. Obviously, they got blown out to Wyoming, but that's a non-conference game. Went to double overtime with Tulsa. I mean, Wyoming, they've got a couple of decent wins, but they really haven't been quite as dominant as Ohio, that's for sure. Yeah, something to keep in mind going into this matchup. Your key points: Ohio 9-4. C.J. Harris is in at quarterback. Curtis Rourke is out, which is definitely the biggest hole in the offense for the Bobcats. But once again, at least they do have a strong rusher in Bangura, who's had a great season, and he's going to be reliable in this matchup. At least they got someone to lean on, and they've also won 7 of their last 8. This team has been hot down the stretch. Once again, it's just that one loss in the MAC championship to Toledo that's been the bad game for Ohio. I mean, otherwise, this team has really been a great team down the stretch. And defensively as well, I mean, this team, they've been poor on defense, that's for sure this year, allowing 28 points a game. But, I mean, if this offense can get it done, if they can score, if they can get up to 30 points, I'd say they got the win in the bag, because I just don't see Wyoming in the fashion and the way their offense is looking right now. I just don't see the Cowboys being able to score too much. Andrew Peasley is the starting quarterback for the Cowboys. He's got talent, but he's inconsistent, that's for sure. I mean, his stats this season are pretty poor. 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, just not very good. And that's why this team has been relying on Titus Swen a lot. And once again, he has rushed for over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, but that's going to be tough when you don't have him, and especially such a key player in the backfield. But they do have DQ James. I'm assuming he's going to be the lead back in this matchup. We did see him have a strong performance earlier this season, and that was in the Hawaii game. He rushed for 179 yards. So we're going to need to see a strong performance out of him if Wyoming wants a chance. But defensively, going to need to force some turnovers as well. That's going to be crucial for the Cowboys here. But that said, let's get the prediction here for Ohio and Wyoming coming up here in the Arizona Bowl. And this one, in the end, I just got to go with the better team here that I feel, and that's going to be Ohio. Wyoming's offense is a mess right now. Once again, they're shorthanded. Both teams are shorthanded, but I feel like Ohio is just a more talented team when it comes down to it. And so I'm going to say this is a lower scoring matchup. I just don't know that both offenses are going to be able to put up a whole lot of points. So I see this being more of a lower scoring matchup. And I'm going to say 20-13, the Bobcats get the win in the end. So I'll say 55% towards Ohio. Over-under's 41. I'm taking the under for this one by a decent amount. And the Bobcats to cover the spread in the end, which is currently 2.5 points towards Ohio. So, I mean, yeah, Ohio's without their starting quarterback, but at least they've got a running back. I mean, for Wyoming offensively, I mean, their quarterback is just not very good, and they've been relying heavily on their top running back, who is out for this game, and that is really what it came down to in the end. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.